Steve Harvey stopped everything when a single mom fainted, and what he did next shocked everyone. In that heart-stopping moment, the bright lights of the studio faded, and the laughter of the audience fell silent. What began as a lively taping of a popular show quickly turned into a gripping tale of compassion and humanity. You won't believe how a simple act of kindness transformed not just one life, but an entire audience's perspective on what truly matters. Stay with us as we dive into a story that will leave you inspired and reminded of the power of empathy. The studio buzzed with excitement as the audience settled into their seats, their faces illuminated by the bright lights and the palpable anticipation of a new episode of Steve Harvey's beloved show. The air was electric with possibility, filled with the chatter of strangers united by their admiration for the charismatic host. Among them sat a single mother, her heart racing with both hope and exhaustion. She had battled through countless sleepless nights, juggled multiple jobs, and endured endless struggles just to be here today. This rare day off was precious, a chance to escape the relentless demands of her life. Even if just for a few hours, craving a moment of joy and laughter that would lift her spirits and give her the strength to face tomorrow. She had arrived early, clutching her ticket like a lifeline, her eyes taking in every detail of the studio. The polished floors, the vibrant set design, the cameras positioned strategically throughout the space. It was all so much more magnificent in person than it had ever appeared on her small television at home. For years, Steve Harvey's humor had been her companion during late nights of solitude, after her children had finally fallen asleep. His wisdom and warmth had guided her through some of her darkest moments, and now, being in his presence, felt almost surreal. As Steve took the stage, the energy in the room soared to new heights. The audience erupted in thunderous cheers and applause, their admiration washing over him in waves. His signature smile lit up the room as he began to engage with the crowd, his quick wit and genuine interest in people immediately apparent. The laughter that followed his jokes was infectious, rippling through the audience like a healing balm. For a moment, the single mother felt her burdens lifting, carried away by the collective joy surrounding her. But as the show progressed, something began to feel terribly wrong. A wave of unexpected dizziness washed over her, starting as a slight disorientation before intensifying with alarming speed. She clutched her stomach, fighting against the rising tide of nausea that threatened to overwhelm her. The bright lights that had seemed so magical moments ago now felt harsh and disorienting, stabbing at her eyes like needles. The vibrant atmosphere around her began to blur as her vision faded at the edges, darkening like a vignette in an old photograph. She struggled to stay upright, her fingers digging into the armrests of her seat as if they could somehow anchor her to consciousness. Her breathing became shallow and rapid, each intake of air feeling insufficient. The sound of laughter and applause began to distort, as if she were hearing it from underwater. She tried to signal to the person beside her, but her limbs felt heavy and unresponsive. A cold sweat broke out across her forehead as panic joined the physical symptoms overtaking her body. In this moment of crisis, all she could think about were her children waiting at home, depending on her to return. Then, in an instant, her body completely betrayed her. The strength drained from her limbs like water through a sieve, and she collapsed. Her dreams of a joyful escape vanished in the blink of an eye as darkness engulfed her consciousness. The joyous cheers that had filled the studio just seconds before turned into gasps of horror and concern. A ripple of movement spread through the nearby audience members as they turned toward the commotion, their expressions shifting from enjoyment to alarm. The studio fell into a tense silence. The abrupt transition from celebration to emergency, leaving everyone on the edge of their seats. Some audience members stood up, craning their necks to see what had happened, while others called out for help. The production assistants exchanged worried glances, unsure whether to continue filming or rush to assistance. In that suspended moment, the artificial world of television production collided with the stark reality of human vulnerability. Little did anyone know, this shocking moment was just the beginning of a heartwarming story that would unfold before their eyes. A testament to compassion in the most unexpected of circumstances. What happened next would not only change the course of the show, but would reveal the true character of a man known to millions, yet truly known by few. As the single mother lay unconscious, fate had set the stage for an extraordinary display of humanity that would touch the hearts of everyone present and the millions who would later witness it. The sudden collapse sent shockwaves through the studio. Camera operators froze, their hands steady on equipment, but minds racing with uncertainty, debating whether to keep rolling or cut away from what was quickly becoming a medical emergency rather than entertainment. Production assistants whispered frantically into their headsets, their voices urgent and strained as they relayed information to the control room where directors and executives were making split-second decisions about how to handle this unexpected crisis. Meanwhile, medical personnel stationed for emergencies, a standard but rarely utilized precaution, rushed toward the fallen woman, their training kicking in as they navigated through the maze of seated audience members, equipment, and cables that suddenly seemed like obstacles in their path to reaching someone in distress. The audience members nearest to Sarah formed a protective circle around her, their faces etched with concern as they called out for help. Some stood with hands covering their mouths in shock, while others reached out tentatively, unsure how to assist but desperate to do something. A middle-aged woman in a floral dress removed her cardigan and gently placed it under Sarah's head, while an elderly gentleman with kind eyes used his program to fan her, his weathered hands trembling slightly with the effort. These strangers, brought together by chance and a shared love for entertainment, now found themselves united in concern for one of their own. Steve Harvey, ever the consummate professional with decades of experience handling unexpected situations, had been in the middle of delivering a punchline when the commotion caught his attention. His well-practiced smile faded gradually as he squinted past the blinding stage lights, trying to make sense of the disturbance in the audience section to his right. The microphone in his hand lowered slightly as his focus shifted from performance to concern. When he realized what had happened, that someone had actually collapsed in his audience, something remarkable occurred that few would have anticipated. The entertainer, the celebrity, the polished television personality vanished in an instant. And the man, Steve Harvey the human being, emerged with startling clarity. Without a moment's hesitation or concern for how it might look on camera, Steve signaled for the cameras to stop rolling, making a cutting motion across his throat that every production professional recognized instantly. Then, surprising everyone present, he bounded off the stage with surprising agility for a man in his 60s, taking the steps 2 at a time in his perfectly polished dress shoes. "Give her some space," he commanded, his authoritative voice cutting through the chaos with the same resonance that had made him famous, but now channeled for an entirely different purpose. The crowd parted like the Red Sea as he made his way through the audience section, some people gasping in surprise at seeing the host leave his designated area to personally intervene. The studio lights, still blazing at full intensity because no one in the control room had thought to dim them yet, cast long, dramatic shadows as Steve knelt beside the unconscious woman. His custom-tailored suit, worth thousands of dollars, pressed against the standard-issue studio carpet as he leaned in close to assess the situation firsthand. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" he asked, his voice gentle yet firm, the same voice that had counseled countless Family Feud contestants through their nervousness, but now directed toward someone who couldn't even hear him. When no response came, he immediately checked for a pulse with practiced movements that hinted at some prior emergency training, relief washing over his expressive face when he found one steady beneath his fingertips. The studio medic arrived seconds later with a medical bag and portable equipment. But Steve didn't step away, as might have been expected. Instead, he remained crouched beside the woman, holding her limp hand between both of his as the medical professional assessed her condition. The medic, a young woman with efficient movements and calm demeanor, quickly checked Sarah's vital signs, shining a penlight into her unresponsive eyes and placing a blood pressure cuff around her arm. After a brief but thorough examination, she looked up at Steve and the gathering of concerned staff. "She's severely dehydrated and her blood sugar is dangerously low," the medic announced, her clinical assessment cutting through the tension. "We need to get her backstage where it's quieter and I can properly treat her. I've called for additional medical support, but they'll take a few minutes to arrive." Several production assistants moved toward them, preparing to call for a stretcher or additional help. But Steve didn't wait. In a move that left the audience gasping and would later become a viral moment captured on dozens of cell phones despite the no recording policy, he carefully gathered the petite woman into his arms. "I've got her," he said simply, adjusting his stance to properly support her weight as he cradled her with the tenderness one might show a child or loved one. The crowd watched in stunned silence as their host, the man they'd come to see perform, the celebrity whose name had drawn them to the studio, transformed before their eyes into something far more meaningful. A fellow human being who cared deeply about the welfare of a stranger. As Steve carried the unconscious mother through the studio and toward the backstage area, the weight in his arms felt strangely familiar somehow. It wasn't the physical burden. Sarah was slight, probably no more than 120 pounds, but rather the emotional weight of the moment that resonated with him. It reminded him of his own struggles decades earlier, of the times when he'd had nothing, when he'd slept in his car and showered at gas stations between comedy gigs that barely paid enough for gas money. He remembered the kindness of strangers that had sustained him during those dark days. Small acts of compassion that had meant everything when he was at his lowest point. A free meal from a restaurant owner who recognized his potential. A tank of gas from a fellow comedian when he couldn't afford to get to the next gig. A landlord who gave him an extra week when rent was due. These memories, usually kept carefully compartmentalized away from his public persona, flooded back as he carried this unknown woman to safety. Behind the curtain, away from the audience's view, a flurry of activity erupted as a makeshift recovery area was quickly assembled in what normally served as a green room for guests waiting to appear on the show. Production assistants cleared away furniture. Someone produced a first aid kit from a storage cabinet. And the show's personal assistant to Steve, a young man named Marcus, who had been with him for 7 years, already had bottles of water and juice ready, anticipating needs before they were voiced. Steve gently laid the woman on a plush leather couch, stepping back only enough to let the medics work, but refusing to leave entirely. His presence a silent insistence that this situation demanded his personal attention. "What's her name?" he asked one of the production assistants who had retrieved her ticket information from the audience database, a standard procedure for all audience members. The assistant, a young woman with an iPad in hand, scrolled quickly through the information. "Sarah," came the reply as she looked up from the screen. "Sarah Mitchell. Single ticket, no guests listed. She's from Garland, about 40 minutes from here. Looks like she applied for tickets 3 months ago." Steve nodded, the information settling in his mind like pieces of a puzzle. A woman, alone at his show, who had waited months for this opportunity and then pushed herself to the point of collapse. There was a story here, one he felt compelled to understand. His intuition, honed by years of interviewing people from all walks of life, told him that Sarah's presence here today wasn't just about entertainment. It meant something significant to her, something worth risking her health for. The studio medic had started an IV line with fluids, a standard procedure for dehydration, and was checking Sarah's blood glucose levels with a small portable device. "Her sugar's coming up," she reported, but it was dangerously low. "Has she been eating today?" she asked, though no one present could answer. As the medics administered glucose and fluids, monitoring the clear liquid as it dripped steadily into Sarah's arm, she began to stir. Her eyelids fluttered like butterfly wings, confusion evident in her unfocused gaze as she tried to make sense of her surroundings. The bright lights, softer here than in the main studio but still disorienting, caused her to squint and turn away slightly. When her vision cleared enough to recognize the face hovering nearby, a face she had seen countless times on her television screen but never expected to see up close, especially not looking down at her with such genuine concern. Her eyes widened in disbelief, a small gasp escaping her lips. "Take it easy," Steve said, his voice low and reassuring, the performative quality completely absent, replaced by genuine human warmth. "You gave us quite a scare out there. Just rest for a minute and let the doctors make sure you're okay." Sarah attempted to sit up, mortification replacing confusion as memories of what had happened began to return. The medic gently placed a hand on her shoulder, encouraging her to remain lying down. I ruined the show," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion, tears welling in her eyes. "Everyone was having such a good time, and I'm so sorry, all those people waiting." Steve shook his head, a gentle smile playing at his lips as he pulled up a chair beside the couch, sitting down to be at eye level with her rather than towering above. "Don't you worry about that for 1 second, he said with conviction. "Shows happen every day. We film multiple episodes, run retakes, deal with technical difficulties. That's just the business. People matter more, always have, always will." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable, and it seemed to calm Sarah somewhat, though the embarrassment still colored her cheeks. As she sipped the apple juice a medic had provided, holding it with slightly trembling hands, Steve remained seated beside her, his presence steady and reassuring. The production manager, a harried-looking woman with a clipboard and multiple pens tucked into her hair, appeared in the doorway, her expression conveying the mounting pressure from executives and audience management. "Steve?" she began, her tone professional but urgent. "We need to make a decision about today's taping. The audience has been waiting for 20 minutes now. Network's asking if we should reschedule or try to continue in about 10 minutes. We're burning daylight and studio time costs." Steve didn't even look up from Sarah, his attention fixed on ensuring she was recovering properly. "Tell them we're taking a break," he interrupted, his tone making it clear this wasn't a suggestion. "Get everyone water and snacks, on my tab, not the show's. Make sure they're comfortable. We'll resume when we're ready, not before." The finality in his voice left no room for argument. The manager hesitated for just a moment, then nodded and disappeared to relay the instructions, knowing that when Steve Harvey made a decision like this, no network executive would overrule him. His contract gave him that power, and his reputation in the industry made challenging such decisions unwise. Steve turned his attention back to Sarah, who was now fully conscious but clearly embarrassed by the situation and overwhelmed by the personal attention from someone she had only ever seen through a screen. "I don't understand why you're here with me instead of continuing the show," she said softly, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of the blanket someone had placed over her legs. "They're all waiting because of me. You should go back. I'll be fine with the medics." Steve leaned forward, his expression serious, the same intensity in his eyes that millions had seen when he delivered life advice on his various platforms, but now directed solely at this one woman who needed to hear what he had to say. "Because right now, this is where I need to be," he said simply but firmly. "The audience will wait. The cameras will wait. Some things in life don't wait, and recognizing those moments, that's wisdom." What Steve didn't know yet, as he sat in that quiet room away from the lights and cameras that had defined so much of his career, was that Sarah's story would touch him more deeply than he could imagine. Her journey, which he would soon learn, involved single motherhood, a recent cancer diagnosis, and a wish to create one happy memory before beginning treatment, would reshape his understanding of his own purpose. His simple act of human decency, performed with no cameras rolling and no thought of public relations benefits, was about to change not just her life, but his own perspective on what truly mattered in this world of fleeting fame and fortune. The man who had built an empire on making people laugh was about to learn that sometimes the most important work happens when the spotlight is off, and all that remains is our humanity. As Sarah's color began to return and the medical crisis passed, Steve sensed they were at the beginning of something significant, a reminder of why he had entered entertainment in the first place: to touch lives, to make meaningful connections, and to use his platform for more than just accumulating wealth and acclaim. The show would resume eventually, but nothing would be quite the same again, for either of them. As Sarah sat on the couch, her embarrassment began to dissipate, replaced by gratitude. Steve Harvey, the man she had admired on television for years, was right beside her, caring for her in a vulnerable moment. "Do you want to talk about it?" Steve asked gently. "You don't have to, if you don't want to." Taking a deep breath, Sarah decided to share. "I'm a single mom of 2. I work 2 jobs just to make ends meet, and I've been trying to save up for a day like today, a break from all the stress. But this wasn't what I had in mind." Steve nodded, his expression empathetic. "Juggling work and kids is no small feat, especially alone. I found out I have to start treatment for cancer," she confessed, her voice trembling. "I wanted today to be a happy memory for my kids." "Your strength is inspiring. You're showing them how to fight through tough times," Steve said, his tone sincere. "Thank you. It's hard to keep it together," she replied, tears in her eyes. "Laughter is one of the best medicines," Steve encouraged, his trademark grin returning. "Once you're feeling better, I want you to come back to the show. We'll have some fun together." "Really? You would do that for me?" Sarah asked, surprised. "Absolutely. You deserve a moment in the spotlight," he promised. Just then, Marcus, Steve's assistant, peeked in. "They're ready to resume filming." "I'll be out in a minute," Steve said. Turning to Sarah, he added, "Remember, you're not alone in this. I'll be waiting for you to come back." "Good luck out there," Sarah called after him, feeling a spark of hope. As the laughter of the audience filtered back, Sarah realized she had found more than a moment of joy. She had discovered connection and support. With renewed determination, she knew she could face her challenges, one day at a time. The true power of community lay in lifting each other up during tough battles, and with that spirit, She felt ready to conquer whatever awaited her. After the show wrapped, Sarah felt a renewed sense of purpose. The audience had erupted into applause, but for her, the real victory was the connection she had made with Steve Harvey. As the excitement of the taping faded, she found herself reflecting on their conversation, a lifeline thrown in her moment of distress. Over the next few weeks, Sarah dedicated herself to her treatment while holding on to the promise of returning to the show. Each day was a challenge, but she leaned into the support of friends and family, sharing her experience and embracing the community that had formed around her. The funny memes, heartfelt messages, and surprise visits from loved ones became her fuel, reminding her that she was not alone in this fight. Steve's words echoed in her mind. Laughter is one of the best medicines. With that mantra, she made it a point to find joy in the small things. Whether it was watching funny videos with her kids or finding humor in her own misadventures, she discovered that laughter truly was a balm for her soul. Finally, the day arrived when she was well enough to return to the studio. As she walked through the familiar doors, excitement bubbled within her. The bright lights and bustling crew felt like a second home. When she spotted Steve, he was in the midst of a conversation with the producer, but turned to her with a beaming smile. "There's my star," he exclaimed, opening his arms wide for an embrace. Sarah stepped into his warm hug, feeling a wave of comfort wash over her. "I can't believe I'm really here," she said, her heart racing. "Thank you for making this happen." "Just wait until you see what we have planned for you," he replied, winking. "You're going to shine today." As the show began filming, Sarah took her place in the front row, her heart filled with anticipation. The audience was lively, and the energy in the studio was electric. Steve interacted with contestants, cracking jokes and sharing stories, all the while keeping an eye on her. Midway through the show, Steve paused and turned to the audience. "We've got a special guest today, someone who embodies strength and resilience. Please welcome Sarah Mitchell." The audience erupted into applause as Sarah stood, her heart pounding. She made her way to the stage, feeling both nervous and exhilarated. When she reached Steve, he took her hand, raising it high as if she were a champion. "This incredible woman has inspired so many of us with her story," he said, his voice filled with warmth. "Sarah, tell us a little about your journey." Under the bright lights, Sarah found her voice. She shared her experience with cancer, the struggles of single motherhood, and the importance of laughter and community. The audience listened intently, moved by her sincerity and strength. As she spoke, she could see the faces in the crowd, people nodding, some wiping away tears. In that moment, she realized the power of sharing her story. It wasn't just about her. It was about everyone who had faced their own battles. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but they were tears of joy and relief. Steve stepped closer, handing her a bouquet of flowers. "Thank you for being brave and sharing your journey with us," he said sincerely. "You are a true inspiration." As the show wrapped up, Sarah felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had faced her fears, embraced her vulnerability, and emerged stronger. With the support of her community and the laughter that had carried her through, she was ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. Walking off the stage, she knew this was just the beginning of a new chapter in her life. She was not just a survivor. She was a warrior, and she would continue to fight for herself and her family, armed with laughter, love, and the promise of brighter days to come. In the weeks following her return to the show, Sarah found herself on a transformative journey. The experience had ignited a spark in her, one that propelled her to embrace life with renewed vigor. She continued her treatment, but instead of feeling burdened by it, she approached each day with a mindset focused on positivity and gratitude. Her children, seeing the change in their mother, began to flourish too. They laughed more, played more, and even joined her in her newfound passion for finding joy in everyday moments. They would often gather on the couch to watch their favorite comedies, sharing popcorn and giggles, a solid reminder of how laughter could lighten even the heaviest of hearts. Motivated by her experience on the show, Sarah decided to give back to others facing similar challenges. She began volunteering at a local cancer support group, sharing her story and offering encouragement to those who felt lost or afraid. Her authenticity resonated with the group, and she found fulfillment in helping others navigate their journeys. One day, while volunteering, she met a woman named Lisa, who had just been diagnosed with the same type of cancer. Lisa was terrified and unsure about her future. Sarah sat with her, listening intently as she shared her fears. Then, with warmth in her voice, Sarah recounted her own journey, the fears, the challenges, and ultimately, the hope. Laughter and community have been my greatest allies, Sarah said, her eyes shining with sincerity. You don't have to go through this alone. We can lift each other up, find joy, and face these challenges together. Inspired by Sarah's words, Lisa smiled for the first time. Thank you for sharing your story with me. It helps to know I'm not alone in this. As the weeks turned into months, Sarah's commitment to her community deepened. She organized fun events, like game nights and movie marathons, inviting families to come together and share laughter. She even reached out to local businesses for support, creating a network of resources for those in need. Meanwhile, her bond with Steve remained strong. They kept in touch, and he often checked in on her progress. One afternoon, he called her with an idea. How about we collaborate on a charity event? We could raise awareness and funds for cancer support while celebrating life and laughter. Sarah's heart soared at the thought. I would love that, she exclaimed. We could make it a big event, with performances and stories shared by survivors. Planning the event became a labor of love for Sarah. With Steve's celebrity status and her grassroots connections, they attracted significant attention. The night of the event arrived, and the venue buzzed with excitement. Survivors, families, and supporters gathered, united by a common goal: to celebrate life and raise funds for those battling cancer. As Sarah stood on stage, looking out at the sea of smiling faces, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. This was more than just an event. It was a movement of hope. She spoke passionately about her journey and the strength of community, urging everyone to support one another. Together, we can create a world where no one faces their battles alone, she declared, her voice resonating with conviction. Laughter, love, and support can heal even the deepest wounds. The audience erupted into applause, and Sarah felt overwhelmed with emotion. In that moment, she realized how far she had come. From a woman who had collapsed from the weight of her struggles to a beacon of hope for others. As the night continued, laughter filled the air, and stories of resilience were shared. Sarah danced, celebrated, and cherished every moment, knowing that she had turned her struggles into strength, not just for herself, but for countless others. In the months that followed, Sarah remained an active force in her community, using her voice to inspire and uplift. She learned that life's challenges could lead to extraordinary opportunities for growth and connection. With each passing day, She embraced her journey with open arms, knowing that she was not alone. As she looked ahead to the future, Sarah felt hopeful and empowered. She had discovered her purpose, not just as a survivor, but as a leader, a friend, and a source of inspiration. And with the love of her children, the support of her community, and the laughter that filled her life, she knew she could face anything that came her way.